Welcome back, my money moguls in training. You are listening to the Do.Different.Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder and CEO of Social Impact Now, founder of the Connect Up Institute, and managing partner of the Integrated Capital Fund. I'm so excited that you are back with me today, and I have a very special treat for you. I have another amazing special guest by the name of Paul Craan. He is the founder and CEO of Peachtree Training. Let me tell you a little bit about Paul. He is going to blow your mind today. Paul is the founder of Peachtree Training Services. He has been helping professionals for the past 15 years improve their communication skills and their personal finances so that they can grow in their careers and in life. He has helped hundreds of clients break free from the paycheck to paycheck cycle that I know many of you are on because you haven't learned some of these lessons that he's about to drop on you. And he has really helped a lot of folks to be able to start living a more financially free life. Paul, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you so much for having me, Elaine. I really appreciate it. I like the title, Do Different Better, right?
Yes.
I'm going to put myself in the different category, okay? In the whole different category. This might be a little bit different from what most people are used to hearing. So hopefully I can change some people's mindsets a little bit on how to think about their money and how to think about savings and investing and so forth.
Yes, I can't wait. And so just to tee it
Yes.
up for the audience, we're going to be talking about Paul's money story and some of his money memories. We're going to be talking about some of the tactical and practical things that you need to be doing now, whether you're flat broke or you've already got some money in the bank. And then we're going to be talking to Paul about his business and how to manage your business better and what are some of the lessons that he's learned over the last 15 years of growing a business throughout the housing crisis and now through an impending recession. So we're going to get into all of that and make sure that you do different better. So first of all, let's kick everything off. Paul, let's go back way back to the beginning. What is your earliest memory of money? And what messages did you observe about saving and spending when you grew up?
Well, no one really ever talked to me about money. I was like, when you're a child, no one really thinks to tell you, hey, this is what money is for. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to save it. No one ever has that conversation with you. It's just something that they assume that you will innately, learn throughout life, but it doesn't work that way. Okay, so I think a lot of us grow up just watching our parents just spending money, and we don't even know where the money comes from. It's just like it looks like it comes out of thin air. They just spend it,
Magic.
and they
It
just
grows
have
on
lots of.
trees.
Yes, it just magically appears, and then they always have money. We never imagine that. Oh my God, my parents have to pay bills. They have to do this, and all these other things happen until we get to that point. Like, man, bills suck. We have to pay bills. We didn't know that. All right, so. And I think the most important thing that I learned from my mom actually is that she would do something with her church friends. It'll be like they would all try to pull money together and save and do something big that they couldn't do before. So they'll pull their money together and then they'll do that. And I think that part of community, that was like my earliest understanding of savings, that you don't have to have all the money. You can use other people's money to accomplish something, and then you just pay the other people back. And I think that is very important to understand, because when I get my clients in and I start telling them about how to save money, and I try to explain to them, their perception of debt is like the wrong perception of debt. And I try to explain to them how debt can be a tool that you can use, but everybody's afraid of debt because they always have this bad connotation of debt. But then I
Yeah.
tell them, look, I said, if I tell you, hey, go get a mortgage, go get a second mortgage to, I don't know, redo your kitchen or redo the floors or redo the patio, you wouldn't have a problem with that, right? But if I said, hey, how about you take a second loan to invest or to do something, then it's like, oh no, that's too risky. And I said, And I'll tell them, hey, and I said, look, it's if you take money or you borrow money and you spend it or you consume it, there is 100% chance that you've lost that money. It's 100%. If
Right.
you bought some shoes, you bought a car, you redid your kitchen or something like that, there's like 100% chance that you've lost that money. And I said, look, if you took took a little bit of risk in that sense, because if you have some equity in your home or something, and you decided to invest that money, which people go against me with this whole thing, but if you started to invest that money, even if you have a 10% chance of growing your money, it's better than 0% chance of growing your money if you spend it in something else. So that's what I try to get them into that mindset. I don't advocate borrowing money to invest or anything like that, but I'm advocating that you can strategically use debt to grow your wealth. And that's
And we're
that's
going to get
that's the
into
point I
that
was
in
trying
this,
to help them with.
we're going to get into that in the second segment. But let's go back to like your memory, because one of the things I think we grew up with maybe two sets of experiences. One, which was your experience of like no one ever talked about money, but the bills were always paid. The other one is which was my story was I had a sense of where the money came from and I knew about bills, but there was nothing left over. Like there was like, and so like, what would,
Oh yeah,
how
yeah.
do you move differently when the money was talked about, but always in the negative, right? It was like, we don't have
The
any, we
negative,
can't get
exactly.
any, we can't, right? And so all of those messages that you might hear, whether it be personally in your own house, or maybe it's in the your neighborhood, right? So tell us maybe a little bit about your neighborhood. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Macon, Georgia, and it's basically a small town. It's not a small town, but it's the second largest city in Georgia. But I'm thinking in terms of everyone in my neighborhood, we were broke. No one had money. It's like, and it seemed normal, and it seemed okay to be broke, and it's almost people used to wear it like a badge of honor that they're broke,
Mm.
meaning that, man, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but God will provide. And all these other sayings that they say to make it seem like it's an admirable thing to be broke or to not have any money. And people used to believe, okay, hey, thank you God for giving me food on the table. I'm like, okay, but that's bare minimum type of thinking.
Can
And
we
then
get some
that's
more
that
food?
kind of that
I want some
mentality.
more food, some better food.
And it's that kind of mentality that a lot of people go through. It doesn't have to be in a religious setting. It could be in any setting. When people say, hey man, I'm just trying to make it, I'm trying to survive, or I'm just trying to make it to the next month, or and things like that. They say these things as though it is a good thing, like it's a badge of honor to be broke. And I said, look, it is not a badge of honor to be broke. I said, it is a devastating situation that you need to try to get out of. It's not something that you should get comfortable with and be happy with. Okay. And it's hard to break out of that, because if that's the environment that you grew up in, and those are the people, and these are well-wishing, loving, wonderful people that just got the wrong idea. And then you just say, hey, look, if we can change this little mindset a little bit here, we can kind of grow and become better.
Yeah, I find the other part of that, and I grew up in a poor neighborhood as well. I grew up in a predominantly Latino Chicano neighborhood. I think we were the only black family, and there was like one white family on our entire block, but the rest of the family they were from all over Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico. Right? We had and
Nice.
but the other message that I saw was like, you know, I think definitely this thing about like you don't borrow money, right? That the I grew up with that, I hearing that a lot,
Oh
like
yeah.
never, never. And there's reasons for that, right? So there's historical context of like
Yeah.
it hasn't benefited us to borrow money. Either one, we do get over leveraged, or and I always tell my entrepreneurs, I said, yeah, debt isn't bad, but you got to have a plan. You got to have a strategy of how you're going to pay it back. Like you don't
Yeah,
just
you
borrow it
gotta
and like and
exactly.
hope for the best, think, well, maybe things will work out. I don't know, it's like you've got to be I mean, you've got to be thoughtful, but this whole idea of um it was so interesting, and I talk about this in the first episode of like watching my grandmother, who was very like very what could be termed as like selfish, right? She was like, I work hard, but
Hmm.
you get this message, I think, definitely as it relates to religion. I grew up Catholic. It's like, blessed are the poor. So like, well,
Yeah.
money is the root of all evil. So there's also this counter message
Exactly.
that you shouldn't want more. You shouldn't want to be wealthy. You shouldn't,
Exactly.
right? Or particularly, I've got friends who are first Americans. It's like they're sending all the money home, but meanwhile, I have a girlfriend of mine. She's from the Caribbean, and she was telling me her money story. And she was like, "Yeah," she's like, "We were struggling, but my mom was sending money back to the Caribbean." Meanwhile, when I was
Oh
12,
my
I
gosh.
go and visit the Caribbean. She's like, "They've got maids, they've got like they're living fine." But she's like, "I want to be. If that's
That
poor,
is
I want to be poor."
no. Exactly. That comes from our sense of community. From people of color or anything like that. We have this kind of sense of community that we want to help as many people as we can because we don't want to be seen as the bad person. As the person that's stingy that doesn't want to help out. So we have that fear, and one thing I explain to a lot of my clients, who are actually Hispanic or Black or whoever, and I explained to them, and I give them the story, and I said, look, when you get on a plane, if you ever travel, you get on a plane, you travel, and then the stewardess comes up, and the stewardess, the first thing she tells you is, look, if there's an emergency, you need to put your mask on first. And I said, look, you put your mask on first before you try helping another person put their mask on. And I think this is key, for our people to understand that, look, if you're sinking and you're trying to help other people that are sinking, it's not going to work. Both of you are going to be sinking. So I say, hey, look, we need to come up with a strategy where you work hard on yourself. Okay, you get yourself to a position where you can help. But if you don't ever get to that position where you can help, you're going to be drowning, you're going to be suffering, and everyone else is not going to be, because there's no amount of money that you give is going to make you a good person. I don't care, how much money you give. If you send $100 this month, and next month you don't send $100, it's like, oh my gosh, this person's terrible, man. They're living the life, and they don't want to help me out. Nothing is ever good for anybody else. Anybody else that's out there that's listening, that's in that situation where they send money back to their country, those people hate you. Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, you don't want to hear that.
There's a low level,
You
but
don't want
they may not hate you, but there's a low level brewing resentment that ends up happening,
exactly.
right?
Yes, there is a resentment. And then that money turns into entitlement. Then they come to the point where they feel that they deserve that money. And if you withhold that money from them, then they feel that you are punishing them, or that you hate them, that you don't want to help them, and not understanding that you have your own struggles, your own things that you're going through. And that's not their problem. Their problems are more important than your problems. So therefore, they just think you're rolling in money in the States or in wherever
Mhm,
else you are, not
mhm.
knowing that you're struggling just like everybody else is struggling. So, and I think that kind of mentality is difficult for people to say, hey, look, I'm not going to send money. I'm not going to help you out. Let me get my act together. Let me get my stuff together. Let me save some money for myself. Okay. It's very hard to get out of that cycle. It's a very hard thing to do.
It is, and I went through that. I had a family member. I mean, I was by no means on easy street. I was a single parent. I had a toddler, and I had somebody who took my checks and started writing checks to pay their bills. Like they literally stole money, but because to them I was better off and they thought that I was in a better position, like I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't miss the money, and I was barely scraping by. You talk about paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah,
I was still a few cents short.
exactly.
Like
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. I can imagine. And it's very hard for people to understand that. Look, you are in a financial situation, but I'm also in a financial situation. Okay. Like, you're going through some stuff. I'm going through stuff. Okay. Because everybody always sees their life through their bubble, through like, what's important to them. And they never imagine or think about the other person. And this is one thing I try to explain to my clients. Like, look, right now, you can't afford to send $100, even though it only looks like $100 to you. It's like, oh my God, it's only $50 or it's only $100. Let me just send it to them or whatever. Okay, look, it's not about the $50 or the $100. It's the habit that you're going to have, that you're going to keep. And that $50, that $100 could be used to build up your wealth so that you can be financially independent one day, as opposed to trying to spend it all. And this is the problem. And I there's a phrase that I use in my book called peacefully broke.
Yeah.
I say, this, and peacefully broke is something that happened to me. And what happened when I say peacefully broke
Well, you know what?
is, let's
Let's hang on
say,
to that. Let's pick that up in the next segment. We're gonna keep it. We're gonna leave folks with a cliffhanger, right? Because this is gonna be great, and
okay.
this is a great tee up for the next segment. So you all want to stick around
Excellent.
and come back and listen to this story because I know you're gonna take away some gems. So, um, this is the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Meet us back for segment number 2 while we have our guest, Paul Craan, and he's going to lay it down on how to get off the paycheck to paycheck cycle. I'll see you back after the break.
Excellent.
Awesome. I know you were just
Here we go.
Welcome back, folks. You're listening to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and I have a very special guest with me. Following up for segment 2, we have got Paul Craan for Peachtree Training, and he left you all with a cliffhanger. So now we're going to jump back into your story. So I want you to pick it up where you left off, Paul. Tell us about your story.
Yes, I peacefully broke is a term that I coined, with that feeling after, let's say, you've paid all your bills. For example, you've paid your mortgage, you've paid your car note, you've paid all the light bills, you paid everything, you paid all your bills, and there's this like $100 left in your account or $150 left in your account. You know that $100 causes you more stress than not having money in the account. Because when you have that $100 left, you start thinking about all the things that you would like to do, but you can't, and then you start thinking about all kinds of ways that you could spend that money. And then it becomes stressful. Hey, should I fix the kitchen sink? Should I send this money to my mother to help her out? Should I, fix that noise that's in the car or whatever? So you have this last $100 and you're thinking, oh my God, I should just go in and have dinner with my wife or enjoy it. And it creates this stress because you have so many things that you need to do, but not enough money to do them all. And then the fastest thing that you do is try to get rid of that $100. You try to get rid of that $100. You don't think about saving it. You don't think about doing anything like that. You try to get rid of that $100. And, we're talking about maybe sending money to your family, doing something else. So what do? You take that $50 or that $100 and you send it away. Or you go out to dinner, or you buy something, or buy some new clothes to make you feel better, or whatever. And then once that $100 is gone, or that $150 gone, once your account is at zero, you feel you actually feel better when your account is at zero, because now you don't have any choices to make. That whole thinking about what do I do with that money? What should I do? That all those choices are gone. And then you come up with the excuse that say, oh my God, I wish I could fix the sink, but I don't have any money. I can't do that. Or I wish I could fix the car. I don't have any money. I could do that. So now you put yourself into the stage I call peacefully broke. And this is a problem.
Yeah,
The
that's the
problem is
self.
that yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
the self-sabotaging, right? That's self-sabotage.
Yeah. Exactly. You self-sabotage and you don't get ahead. You don't make any progress. You don't build any wealth. You don't do anything, but you just love being in that cycle of I don't have any money. I'm broke. I'm waiting for the next check. I'm just trying to make it to next week. I'm just trying to make, and you're in that cycle, and then you feel like it's normal because you are in a normal state. But if you just try to keep $100 in your account just for 1 week or 2 weeks and see how difficult that was going to be for you. It is almost nearly impossible for some people just to keep $100 in their account from one paycheck to the next paycheck. It's almost is it's crazy,
I had
to
I
think that how
literally had an
difficult that will be.
Yeah, I literally had a partner and I left that partner. That was one of the big reasons why I left that partner. I was like, "I feel like you're ATMing us to death." And I cannot I literally said that to this person. I said, "If I stay with you, you are ATMing us to death." Like, he would take out,
Yeah,
like, $20, like, every other day, and I'm like, "Okay, that's 40, $60. You multiply that by 3 or 4 weeks." And I'm and it's so great that you have words to this. It's like I didn't have words for it. I'm like, "You feel uncomfortable that we've actually now saved up some money because we were trying to buy a car because neither one of
ex-
us had a car."
exactly.
I'm like, "You
Uh-huh.
just can't stand to see this money in the account. Like, it's
Yeah.
bothering you that this money isn't." Now, obviously, that's
It's
not the first step that's happening, right? But it's like,
yeah.
clear it's a compulsion that you're like, "Oh, because you
It's
see it there,
exactly.
let me take it
It's
out." And I'm like, "Ah, what are you doing?"
exact.
I was literally
And
I wanted to, like, put my hands around his neck.
do you know that there's an answer for that? I actually had to look for the answer. I tried to research and try to figure out what happened. And one of the best answers I got for this was that people that come from an ancestry that is in a warm climate, okay, people in the Caribbean, people in Africa, people that come from ancestry that are in warm climates, they never had the necessity to save because every time they woke up in the morning, the fruits would be right there. They just take the fruit and they eat it,
Yeah,
or they just go to the river and fish. They just go to the ocean and fish, and they'll do what they have, and they just live for that day.
yeah,
Okay, and if they try to save some fruit or save some vegetables, guess what would happen? It would go bad because there was no refrigeration. It would go bad. So it actually was frowned upon to try to save money. You
yeah,
just had, or try to save food, I mean. So you just had to live for that day. And this has come down all the way down to our DNA, to a lot of people's DNA, that they cannot save money. It to them, it's a bad thing. It's like they're wasting the opportunity to spend that money today because they
yeah.
they don't want to wait for tomorrow.
I think there's another piece of it because this person wasn't from the South, but I think the other psychological part of this is that it is the hedonistic compulsion, right? Like I want to be that I want the dopamine hit, right? I want to like
Exactly.
we talk about retail
Instant
therapy. It's like
gratification.
you
Exactly.
know you're behind, shouldn't be shopping. You know you got this credit card that you need to pay down, but you went and go bought those shoes. I've got a friend right now. She's like, "Oh yeah, I went to go." I'm like, "Why don't you just buy one really nice expensive wig instead of like all these $30 wigs that you." She's like, "Oh no, I like to throw them away." And I'm like, my brain is like
What?
going like it's going crazy. But I want to move on to like your paycheck to paycheck cycle. So you've helped hundreds of professionals break the paycheck to paycheck cycle. When did you break yours and what was the turning point where everything clicked for you personally?
Okay. Well, I was in my 30s at this time. I was in my 30s, about 15 years ago. And and what happened was, actually in my early 20s, I did a workshop first, for a company, and I did this workshop, and they paid me like $2,000. And that was huge for me. Oh my God, I went and I spoke to some people and they paid me. They just paid me to talk. And I was excited, like, what? Okay. So I did a workshop. They paid me $2,000, and I spent that $2,000 in the same week. That week, like, I got the money on Monday. By Friday, I was broke. Okay. And I was so angry with myself. I was so angry with myself because it took me 6 months to get that contract. It took me 6 months to get ready, prepare for that workshop, to do all that work. And when I finally got paid, I just spent that money in a week. It was like less than a week. And I was so upset with myself, and I kept thinking, man, there you go again, Paul. You just can't, you can't get ahead. You can't do anything. And I, started really being angry with myself. And, thank God I got another opportunity to do another workshop from the same company, because they were so happy with the last workshop. They say, hey, why don't you come teach some more people this was about when I was teaching communication skills. And it said, sure, no problem. So here I get another chance, but I get a bigger group this time. So they paid me 4,000 pesos. $4,000, $4,000 at that time. And that $4,000 at that time was a lot of money. So I said,
It's still a
the
lot of
first thing
money.
I
I don't
did,
like $4,000 have
yeah,
show up in my bank account.
but $4,000. And then what I did, I went straight to the bank and I opened a certificate of deposit. I said, I'm going to open a CD. I'm not going to touch this money. I'm not going to do anything with this money. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to save that money. And then I decided to do that, the CD. And, and I just left the CD there, and it was around October. And then December rolled around, and guess what? It's Christmas time, holidays. I don't have any money. My wife wants to spend money. The kids need my son needs the new toys or whatever. All these things happening around Christmas, and I didn't have any money. But the only thing I had was the certificate of deposit, that $4,000 that I had. So the first thing that came to mind was, hey, I'm just going to break my CD or break my certificate of deposit and basically spend the money. And I didn't want to do it. And all the way to the bank, I'm like kicking myself. I don't want to go to the bank. I don't want to break this CD. And when I got there, one of the representatives there that I was telling, hey, I'm going to break my CD. She saw in my face that I didn't want to do it. And she said, hey, you could borrow money against your certificate of deposit. Did you know that? And I was like, really? I was like, sure. She said, hey, look, you put your deposit, your certificate of deposit as collateral, and we'll let you borrow $3,000. And I said, that's great. So I thought that was like the most wonderful thing, that I got, $3,000. And what I did was when I got the $3,000, we ended up spending to make a long story short, we ended up spending about $1,000, for Christmas, and I had $2,000 left. And then I thought, hey, I got $2,000 left. Let me just go ahead and pay back the loan that I got from the bank, and be done with it. And when I was going to the bank to pay back the loan, I was going to talk to the lady, hey, let me pay back $2,000 of the loan. Something clicked to me and said, why do that? I was already planning on paying that loan anyways. I said, let me just take that $2,000 and put it in another certificate of deposit. So what I did was I took that $2,000 and I put in another certificate of deposit. Now I have $6,000 in a certificate of deposit, but I had a loan for $3,000. So $6,000 was the most money that I've ever had, together, during this time. Like, wow, I got $6,000. And what did I do? I did everything I could. I paid back the loan. It was like maybe in 6 or 7 months. I paid it off. I paid as fast as I could, paid it off. And now I was left with $6,000. And I thought, my gosh, it's like, I could do that. I could save my own money. It was incredible because I never had the habit of saving money. I never had that habit of saving money. So what I did next was I borrowed $5,000 from the bank, based on my $6,000 worth of CDs. And I put that $5,000 in another certificate of deposit. Now I got $11,000. And I thought I was a millionaire at that time, like $11,000,
You're like,
something. So what I learned was a phrase that hit me from one of my economics professors in a university. And he used to always say this, and I never got it until that moment. And he said, more money has never solved any problems. More money management solves problems. And I was like, okay. So, I was so busy trying to look for more money out there, but what was I doing with the money I was already having here? What I was already getting? I was thinking, man, more money, but it's not really more money. It's managing the money that you already have. That is the key, and this is the situation, because I'm sure a lot of people have they've gotten a promotion, they've gotten a raise, they've gone to another company or whatever, and they significantly increase their income. But guess what happens? Their lifestyle automatically increases to meet the new income, and you still have no money. It's because you still have that habit of spending everything that comes in. So
Right.
this is the situation. So when I talk to my clients and I try to help them, I say, hey, look, let's take a pause. Let's look at how we can better manage what's already coming in, what you already have. Instead of saying, hey, I want to start a business. Hey, I want to, I don't know, go sell on Amazon or whatever the next new shiny thing that everybody wants to do, to try to think that's going to save them when it's
Right.
not. Okay. It's like the money
Right.
that you're already getting is what's going to save you. All right. And this is the situation, because that's going to change your mindset. Now, after I got that $11,000, I thought everything was possible. I could do anything. This is what I mean. Like, this is the audacity to dream. Like, when I had that $11,000, I said, hey, look, if I could do that, there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing anything else that I wanted to do. So guess what I did during this time? I started learning more about finances. I learned about ETFs. I learned about, different stocks and I learned about all these things different. I learned about real estate. I took all this opportunity to learn all these things, because now I had money to do something about those things that I've always wanted to do, but I didn't have any money to do it. I couldn't pay for an online course. I couldn't pay for mentoring. I couldn't pay for any of those things because I never had any money. So now I have the money to do those things and take advantage of the knowledge that I got from the various things I was able to take advantage of
I
in
love
terms of
that.
learning.
I love that, and it's so important, and I think your journey was very similar to mine. It was just like there was this crushing moment, and it's kind of like that caterpillar to butterfly. You're like you bust it, and you're like,
Yeah.
what? The whole world just opened up to you, and it's like, oh, and I remember, and I've told this story on the show. Like my moment was, I read this Susie Orman book, and she was saying, like, just starting with $25. Like, she's like, just start somewhere. So I literally started saving $5 a week. Like, I'm like, okay, even though I'm
Nice.
living paycheck to paycheck, let me just start with something.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me start. And then when I got comfortable and I wasn't missing the $5, I upped it to $10. And when I stopped missing the
Nice.
$10, I upped it to $20. And I just kept going. And then I remember it in very short order, just like you, like it was like 6 months or something had gone by, and my son needed something. I don't even remember what it was. I don't know if it was like the sports team thing or what it was. But I remember I was like, when it came up, I remember that I did not have to check my bank account. And I was like, that was the
Nice.
moment. I was like, I knew that I had it,
It's good
which
to
I
have
had
money.
never
It's like,
felt
wow, it's
before.
good to have money.
Right?
Exactly.
I
You
never
know,
had that before. And so to be able to just be like, know that that money, and I remember where I was when I had the thought. I was like, this is wealth. This wealth isn't necessarily having all this money. Wealth is that you can take care of the
exactly.
things that you need to take care of, and you know it, you got it. You know you got it, or you're gonna get it, or like
Exactly.
you just know, and you don't, to your point, like I'm not stressing about that there's only $100 in there. Like, right? Like I'm not even,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I can go, like, what color do you want? Like, what do you, I was like, what do you, we're going to get it, come in and get all
It's like, you're like, let's go, let's go.
this, right? But
And this is
I want to wrap up this segment, but we're going to come back. That you are listening to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. We are listening to the amazing Paul Craan, who is the founder and CEO of Peachtree Training. And we're riding this wave. And so we've just been talking about how do you get off the paycheck to paycheck cycle of just depression. But when we come back, we're going to dig into this whole, like, how do you get to the first 100,000, and we're going to be getting into Paul's business and what the lessons he's learned in growing and expanding his business. So don't forget to follow us on YouTube and on all of the socials. You are listening to the Do Different Better Show. I will see you in our final segment after the break.
excellent.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Welcome back, my money moguls. We are now in the third segment of the Do Different Better show with my amazing guest, Paul Craan, founder and CEO of Peachtree Learning, or Peachtree Training, I'm sorry. And we are just getting started. But before we kick things off, because Paul just dropped like some big time knowledge on how to get off the paycheck to paycheck cycle using certificates of deposits, which are available to anybody everywhere. As long as you have
Yes.
access to a financial institution, there should be no barrier to entry in this particular practical and tactical tactic. And you can learn more about his other tactics that he provides and go into way more detail than the few minutes that we talked about in the show with his book. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about the book. Tell us how the book came to be. Tell us maybe some tidbits that people are going to find in the book. I'm just gonna let you go. Let her rip.
Thank you, Elaine. Well, the book actually came about from my clients. My clients were always telling me, "Hey, man, you helped all of us. You got to write something to help a lot more people." And I said, "Okay." So I try to, I went ahead and got down all the best tips and tricks that I got over the years on how to save money, and I actually came up with the 5-step savings plan, which I explained earlier with the certificate of deposit. Basically go open a CD. It is the easiest thing that you can do. You don't need to talk to a stockbroker. You don't need to know anything about finances. You don't need to do anything. Just go to a bank and say, "Here, take my money and give me a certificate of deposit." That is all that you need to do. And this is the point of entry is so easy. This is why, I don't want to try to tell you, "Hey, look, you need to go to a stockbroker. You need to do." I don't want you to do any of those things. I want you to do the easiest thing possible, is to go open a certificate of deposit. Then any bank anywhere around the world, you can go open a certificate of deposit. And then at that point, I want you to take a loan based on that certificate of deposit, and then you deposit in another certificate of deposit. People tell me, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Why would I pay interest for my own money?" And I said, "Hey, wait, let's say, okay, you pay interest for your car, you don't have a problem. You pay interest for your credit cards, you don't have a problem. You pay interest for whatever else. But when I ask you to pay interest for your own money that is going up in value, then we have a problem." So I say, "Hey, look, I try to encourage them, to let them, hey, look, this is just, and this is what you have to do to create the habit of saving. This is just helping you get to the point where, hey, look, and the best thing is, I tell people, look, the problem with the whole, remember they had this whole FIRE movement like a few years ago about financial independence,
Retire
what
early.
is it? Financial independence, retire early
Retire
or something like
early.
this.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the problem with that was, you'd have to give up your whole life. You'd have to spend, don't spend any money at all. And it was so restrictive for people to kind of follow. And this is why, it ran into a roadblock, because, my goal is, look, you need to spend some and save some. You need to spend some and save some. You need to enjoy your life today. Okay. And you also need to worry about tomorrow. So if you spend it all today, you're not going to be happy tomorrow. But if you save it all today, you're not going to be happy today. So the goal
I got a
is, when you
question for you.
create.
I got a question for you, Paul. So when you talk about,
Yes.
rolling up CDs, right? How do you,
Yes.
what should you be thinking about, or how do you reconcile if your CD may be paying you at a lower rate than that they're loaning the money to you? Or how do you navigate that conversation with the bank?
Okay. For example, you have to keep in mind that you have two CDs as opposed to one. So you're getting interest on two CDs, but you're only paying interest on one loan. Okay, so the two CDs, the interest that you're going to be receiving from both CDs should usually cancel out the interest that you're paying on the loan, which is not which is a very small price to pay, to have someone force you to save your own money. Because if you didn't have this method or this, system, you wouldn't be able to save money anyways. You wouldn't save it at all. That money would
Right.
have gone to Burger King, McDonald's, I don't know, wherever. You would have wasted that money in nothing. So I think thinking, stop worrying about that, that extra $5 a year you might have to pay in interest or whatever, that you would have spent that money in nothing anyways, and you wouldn't have the money at the end of the year that you have now. That's the point. You think about paying the bank to force you to save your money. That's pretty much how you have to think about it.
You're
Okay.
like tuition.
So if you
You're paying
don't,
a tuition.
you're paying a tuition because you don't have the habit. And if anyone has ever tried to save money, they understand what I'm talking about. As soon as you save that first amount, the car breaks down or the refrigerator stops working. Something happens and you have to what? Take out your savings to take care of this emergency. You have to do all these things, and you feel terrible because you started saving and then something happened, and it's
Mhm.
like a yo-yo diet. You
Mhm.
lose some weight and then you gain it all back again. And this is that feeling that I wanna remove from the equation. And once you pay that loan every month that you have, which is actually your own money that you're saving, once you pay that loan every month, guess what? You're free to do what you want to do. You don't have to say, "Oh my God, I don't have to feel guilty about going to a restaurant. I don't have to feel
Right.
guilty about buying those shoes or whatever. I don't have to feel guilty about those things because I've already saved the money." It's that
Right.
mindset shift that, okay, you've already taken care of saving the money because we are so good at paying bills, but we're terrible at saving money. So what I
Right.
did was create a bill for yourself. And
There
this is
you
the
go.
idea. And this is the mentality. It takes me a while to get people to jump on board, but if you
Well, I
read
mean,
the book,
it's like
hopefully.
anything. Yeah, it's like anything. If you formed a bad habit, it's going to take a while to undo that habit. So what I love about what you're offering is especially, and it doesn't have to be your forever plan, right? You could say, "Hey, I'm going to
No, it's
do
not. It is
Paul's
not your
plan for the next year or two until, like you said, I've exercised this muscle, and then I'm going to take all that and I'm going to invest it, or I'm going to put this in a 401k, or I'm going to put it in an IRA, whatever." But to
exactly.
your point, the whole idea is like that thing with me and Susie Orman is getting started. And to your point, this is the easiest thing. So I want to now make a shift because we've talked about mindset. What's the mindset shift that has to happen? We've talked about something practical and tactical that people can do to actually start to get to that first 100,000, which we know is the B word. And now I want to talk about like growing a business, right? Because I think that there's also even when you talked about getting that first gig at 2,000 and getting that next gig at 4,000, how have you grown your business, and what would you say is maybe different now than maybe 10 or 15 years ago when you started?
Oh, well, um, the savings, we're going to go back to savings a little bit. The savings gave me the cushion or the audacity to take more risk. For example, if I wanted to do something, I can borrow anything, any business you want to do, anything that you have in mind. I can borrow money against my certificate of deposit, take that risk, start a business, do what I need to do. All right. And the business is supposed to pay back that loan. Okay. But if the business cannot pay back that loan, then you just have a hobby. You don't have a business. So you wanna now, and guess what happens? If the business doesn't work, it's okay. You still have the money in the bank. And you can have some time to gather your thoughts, or retreat and regroup and try something different. All right. But when you take the money that you have saved up, all your money, and you put it in a business, now you don't have the money saved. All the money's invested in the business. And if that business doesn't work out, guess what? You're gonna have to start from zero again. And this is the devastating thing a lot of people don't understand, that look, you don't need to start from zero all the time. And this is the situation. You don't need to start from zero all the time. You can have some money saved up, borrow against that money, take a risk. If it doesn't work out, you still have your money. All you need to do is pay back that loan. And then guess what? I call it living life with knee pads on. Okay. Having savings is like living life with knee pads on and a helmet. All right. Because when you fall, if you fall, it's not devastating. It's not, detrimental to your finances. All
I
right. And this is
love
the
that.
this is the key.
That
You
is
know,
awesome.
so
I love that. Well, we're sliding into the finish line. That is a wrap on today's episode of the Do Different Better Show. We have been talking to Paul Craan, the founder and CEO of Peachtree Training, and he has just dropped some gems. So I hope you were paying attention. If you haven't seen it already, please, please, please check out his book. It's available on Amazon. Is How to Be Financially Free, capital F, capital R, capital E, capital E. How I make finance easy, real easy for everyone. Kind of like this show. We've got the link scrolling, so make sure you check that out. You know where to find me at How to Do a Better with Elaine. If this episode hit home from you, if this episode hit home for you, I want to hear from you. DM me. Tell Paul, how was this show for him? Tell him how much you are just raving about everything that you've heard. But tag me. Make sure I want to know all of your stories and how amazing mindset shifts you've been able to make and what you've been able to do by leveraging CDs. Share this episode with somebody, and make sure that you subscribe. Give us a follow. Give us a rating. We would love to hear from you. And you know that we are here to talk the real talk. Until next time, I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and let's do better, do different better together. I'll see you soon.
thank you, Elaine. Thank you for having me. It was
Thank you
great.
for having us. Thanks for being on the show, Paul. Awesome. And that's a wrap. Great show.